Hello everyone and welcome to my channel called the Monster Time. Thank you so much for coming. For any kind of support to my channel, for your likes, for your comments, for your donations, for your shares. All information about donation you can find down below in comments. Today we continue reading this book called Grimm's Fairy Tales, and our story is called The Gnome. There was once a king who lived in a place filled with treasures. But his favorite thing was the beautiful apple tree in his garden. Apples hung from the branches like gleaming rubies. To protect the tree, the king put a spell on it. Anyone who picked an apple would sink deep underground. One morning, the king's 3 daughters were walking by the apple tree when the youngest one said, "Our father loves us far too much to wish us underground. I bet the spell only works on strangers." She picked a large apple and took a bite. It was delicious. She offered it to her sisters and they tasted it too. But while they were eating, the ground became soft like sand. To their horror, they sank down and the ground closed over them. Midday came and the 3 princesses did not arrive for lunch. The king ordered his servants to search everywhere in the palace and garden, but his beloved daughters were nowhere to be found. The king was beside himself with grief. He announced that whoever found his daughters and brought them back safely would have one of them as his wife. Then all the men in the land went out into the kingdom, searching high and low. Among them were 3 brothers who were huntsmen. They traveled far from their home looking for the princesses and reached a great castle. Strangely, the flags were flying and the drawbridge was lowered, but no one seemed to be about. The brothers entered the castle and searched the rooms, but there was not a soul to be seen. In the great hall, the young men found the table laid with steaming plates of food. They were so hungry that they sat straight down and ate. The 3 tired brothers agreed that they would rest there that night and use the castle as a base for the next few days while they continued looking for the princesses. The following day, the eldest huntsman stayed to watch over the castle while his 2 younger brothers went out searching. At noon, steaming plates of food appeared on the table in the great hall once again. Then a strange little man walked in. "May I join you for lunch?" he asked. "No, you can't," said the huntsman rudely, and he kicked the little man out. When his brothers returned home, the eldest huntsman told them all about the visit from the gnome and what he had done. I'll stay and watch over the castle tomorrow, the middle brother said, and exactly the same thing happened again. On the third day, the youngest brother stayed. All happened as before, but when the little man said, "May I join you for lunch?" the youngest brother did not refuse. Instead, he replied, "Of course, be my guest." How come youngest always the smartest? Then the little man grinned and said, "I am a gnome and I live underground with my thousands of brothers. I can tell you where the princesses are." He took Hans, for that was the youngest huntsman's name, and showed him a deep well. "Take a bell and a sword and go down in the bucket," the gnome instructed. "You will find 3 rooms below. In each one is one of the princesses with a dragon, whose many heads she has to come. To rescue the princesses, you must cut the heads of the dragons." Poor dragons. "But beware your brothers, for they will be jealous of you and try to get rid of you." And with that, the gnome disappeared. Yeah. Hans returned to the castle and later on told his brothers everything except for the gnome's warning, of course. The next morning they went to the well together. The eldest brother said it was his right to try to rescue the princesses first, so he sat in the bucket with a bell and his sword and said, "If I ring, pull me up straight away." The 2 younger brothers began to lower him down in the darkness. Excuse me. But the eldest huntsman became afraid before he reached the bottom, so he rang his bell and they drew him up again. Then the second brother sat in the bucket, but he did just the same as the first. Finally, it was Hans' turn. He sat in the bucket all the way to the bottom. Then he jumped out, hurried to the first room, and listened outside the door. He could hear the dragon snoring loudly. He opened the door and there was one of the princesses. She was sitting on the floor, combing the dragon's 9 heads. Hans drew out his sword and hacked them off. Oh, 9-headed dragon. Here is the boy. And here's the princess. The princess sprang up and kissed him. Oh, Hans went to the second princess, who had a dragon with 5 heads, to comb, and he fought the second dragon and hacked all its heads off. At last he reached the youngest, who had a dragon with 4 heads, and he killed the last dragon and rescued her too. All 3 princesses rejoiced and kissed him. Lucky Hans. Then Hans sat a princess in the bucket and rang his bell very loud, and his brothers heaved her up, then the second, and then the third. When it came to Hans' own turn, he remembered the warning of the gnome. He put a big stone in the bucket instead of himself and shouted that he was ready to be heaved up. Then his brothers began to pull and the bucket began to rise. But when it was halfway up, they cut the rope and the bucket fell to the ground and was smashed to bits. Gnome was sorcerer or something. How he knew. The brothers thought they had killed Hans. They made the three princesses promise not to say anything. Then they took them back to the king and each demanded one of them in marrying. Meanwhile, Hans was wondering how he would ever escape from underground. Suddenly he noticed a strange little silver flute hanging on a hook on the wall. He took it down and cautiously played a few notes on it. And all at once the room was filled with gnomes. "Why have you summoned us?" they all asked. Hans explained that he wanted to get back above ground again and asked politely for their help. Immediately, the gnomes all took hold of him, and with one great leap, they sprang up out of the earth, and Hans was once again back in the daylight. Yay! He hurried off at once to the king's palace and arrived not a moment too soon, for his bad brothers were just about to marry two of the princesses. All three princesses were overjoyed to see Hans, and they told the amazed king the whole story. The king ordered the two wicked huntsmen to be banished from the kingdom at once, never to return. And Hans married the youngest princess, and they both lived happily ever after. Of course, the youngest brother married the youngest princess. Oh, that's okay. That's it, my dear. See you next time. Bye.